welcome to today's video. As I mentioned a couple videos ago, my husband and I, after Logan's birth, found ourselves very unexpectedly expecting a third child. After Logan's birth, we knew that it would be safer for me and any subsequent children that we had to give it at least a year before we even started trying again. So my husband and I were very actively preventing a pregnancy. I was on birth control pills, and we were using a spermicidal lubricant to, hopefully increase our odds of not becoming pregnant, or decrease of our odds of becoming pregnant. But that didn't work exactly. I had, at the end of March and again at the beginning of April, I had surgery to fix some carpal tunnel issues. What we didn't know at the time, what nobody told us, is that the use of antibiotics can decrease the efficiency of birth control pills. They said after the fact, after I found out that I was pregnant, the doctor said 1 dose of antibiotics during surgery is usually not enough to do so, but because I had surgery 2 weeks, I had it one day and then 2 weeks later I had the other one done, it was enough to decrease the effectiveness when I needed it the most, which is at the start of my period and at ovulation. So we found out that we were pregnant on May 2nd. On May 4th, I actually had a doctor's appointment to switch my birth control pills because I wasn't so sure they were working all that well for me. But we turned that appointment into a prenatal appointment. So we had our first ultrasound and we saw the little heartbeat. We also discovered that there was a subchorionic hemorrhage in my uterus again, and that part of the placenta was not attached to my uterus, basically. They said it was no big deal at that point in time, and that the baby would, everything would be fine. It was just still really early. So we went back at 8 weeks, same thing, everything was looking the same. And at that point, my OB had decided that because I had diabetes and because I had hyperemesis again, it was just too far out of her scope to feel comfortable with my pregnancy, and she referred me to a high-risk OB. When we went into the high-risk OB, it was the worst mistake of my life, going to these people. Number one, the first thing that they said to me when they looked at the ultrasound was, the baby is measuring behind, so be prepared for a miscarriage. They told me that they could not find a subchorionic hemorrhage and that the placenta was completely attached to my uterus. Later we learned that neither of those were the case. Neither of them. They refused to get me any type of help for the hyperemesis. And really I felt as if at that point they were, the high-risk doctors who were supposed to be the best at treating this type of stuff were trying to shove me into a box of what a pregnancy should be instead of looking at what my pregnancies are. So I went round and round with them, and eventually at 12 weeks I decided to switch OBs because I just couldn't handle it anymore at that point. I went to a very nice practice that felt that my issues were within their scope, and they were willing to do whatever it took to get me from miserable pregnancy to happy, healthy baby. So I had an ultrasound at their office just to check in and make sure everything was going okay. And thankfully, everything was looking great. That doctor did immediately find the subchorionic hemorrhage and he said that yes, the placenta is still not attached to part of my uterus. It's next to my cervix. Bless me, sorry. Sorry about that. It may or may not cause problems, but that was a source of bleeding that I had been experiencing, because as the sections kind of filled up with blood, they would fill up and then overflow, and I would start bleeding. So it was something that we were going to keep an eye on. He moved my NT scan up from 14 weeks to 12 and a half weeks. And we went in and we saw, you know, we had it done. We saw the baby. She was doing really, really well. I'm going to backtrack for just a second. At 9 weeks, roughly, at 4th of July, whenever 4th of July was, or no, not 4th, Father's Day, so June 10th-ish, 15th maybe, we purchased a gender determination kit. It's called a sneak peek test. You take a little sample of your blood and send it off to a lab, and they look to see whether you're having a boy or girl. Our results came back that we were having a little girl. We named her Lily Elizabeth Ann, and we were so excited, let me tell you. But so that's how we found out we were having a little girl. We found out at 10 weeks that we were having a baby girl. So back to the NT scan. She was looking really, really good. The OB guy, I don't know what you would call him. He wasn't really an ultrasound tech. He's a guy that specializes in genetic screenings. So he did all kind of stuff. But he says she's looking really good. There were multiple subchorionic hemorrhages, and there was a good portion of the placenta that was not attached to my uterus. But again, they said, you know, it's still early. It will attach itself, don't worry. Everything will be okay. The one concerning point at this point was that her heart rate was slightly elevated. But he didn't seem too concerned because she was a very active little girl. She moved a lot. And she didn't rest the entire hour and a half that this scan went on. So he wasn't too concerned that her heart rate was slightly elevated. At 13 weeks, 2 days, I went in with a Doppler and I found Lily's heartbeat right away. At 13 weeks, 3 days, same thing. 13 weeks, 4 days, same thing. 13 weeks, 5 days, I woke up, I didn't puke, I wasn't nauseous, nothing. That night, 13 weeks and 5 days night, I could not find her heart rate. I thought, you know, maybe she's just little, she's hiding behind something. We knew that I had an anterior placenta, so maybe she's just hiding behind that. I'll check again tomorrow. 13 weeks, 6 days, not sick when I wake up, still can't find the heartbeat. At 14 weeks and 1 day, I went to the doctor, I called her and I said, you know, I can't find the heartbeat, the baby's heartbeat, I'm kind of nervous, can you check? So I went in and they did an ultrasound to check, and her heart had stopped beating at 13 weeks and 5 days. 13 weeks and 5 days. Her heart had stopped beating. So we didn't know why at that point, why we had lost her, but it was considered a second trimester loss, and so I was scheduled in for a D&E, which is essentially the same thing as a D&C, but because it's your second trimester, they call it something different. I had the D&E on July 12th, ironically the day before our very first miscarriage, back in 2013. And we opted to have Lily undergo an autopsy. They did a fetal autopsy and they did chromosome testing to make sure that everything was fine. That testing did confirm that we were in fact having a little girl, but there was absolutely no reason that they could find genetically as to why she passed away. Ironically though, the reason she passed away, and we know this now, is because my placenta was not attached to my uterus, and Lily was struggling to get the nutrients that she needed to grow. It's something that we were told over and over and over again was not a big deal and that it would resolve itself. But ultimately that was what killed our child. That and the fact that I had HG, hyperemesis, that first, and was so depleted. At that point I had lost like 20 pounds by my 13 week, by the time I was in my second trimester basically. So ultimately we lost our little girl. We had her cremated. I have her remains in a little bag in my living room currently, and I'm going to be making a bag, or a little teddy bear out of material for my wedding dress to put her ashes into, so that we'll always have a little remembrance of her. But that is my story with my 7th pregnancy, also my 5th loss, and our only known little girl. Excuse me, I just got the hiccups. So thank you guys for watching. Sorry that this is a little bit of a Debbie Downer video. My next one will definitely be a bit more enjoyable. I will see you guys later.